The UK government is drafting a new definition for extremism, and it is causing concern that it may undermine some traditionally held Christian beliefs. And to help us understand a bit more about what's going on and to discuss it on the programme today, we're joined by Kieran Kelly, who's Deputy Director of the Christian Institute. Good afternoon to you, Kieran.
Afternoon, Maria.
So can you just explain to us what these changes are and how we define extremism, or what might be happening?
Well, yeah, that is the big question. How do we define extremism? Well, at the moment, the kind of definition that's used in a nutshell is about a vocal or active opposition to British values. And British values encompasses things like tolerance of various beliefs. What's been proposed is, and it's a draft at the moment, the speculation is that a definition is going to be released next week. So the draft wording that's being talked about at the moment is advancing an ideology based on intolerance, hatred, or violence that aims to undermine the rights and freedoms of others.
Wow, so a lot to be sort of processing. So obviously we've heard some concern that this new definition may have an impact on various Christians. Can you explain to us what the concern is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's worth doing a little bit of a history lesson because we've been down this road before. What tends to happen is you get instances of unacceptable behaviour, often violent behaviour, and then there's a rush to sort of clamp down on it without actually thinking, what does the current law already allow the police and the authorities to do? And the Christian Institute has dealt with this sort of concern in terms of vague and broad wording for nearly 25 years, going all the way back to 2001. And so the worry is around, in that definition that I gave, that draft definition, is words like intolerance, hatred, undermine. What do those things really mean? I mean, sadly, we live in a day and age where many Christian views are regarded as intolerant or hateful. One of the things that perhaps Christian Institute might have in common with J.K. Rowling is that people are all too quick to throw these sort of terms around. And others, women who don't want men in their changing rooms. So we live in this society where if you disagree with me, if I'm offended by the sorts of things that you say or believe, whether you say them or not, then that is hateful. Now, this is a non-statutory change, and where it's going to affect groups and individuals is likely to be around how government works with those groups. So many your Christian listeners are going to be thinking, well, I'm not an extremist. I don't really have anything to worry about this. And they may well be right. But you've got to think about it slightly more broadly, because if there is groups, perhaps like the Christian Institute, but other groups as well, or individuals whose views on things like abortion or biological sex and what have you are deemed to be inappropriate, hateful, intolerant, then those views get excluded from public discourse. They get excluded from having an influence on government. And so you sort of expand the echo chamber that exists of people just with one kind of view. And we've seen this happen before. And that's just a really important point. We saw it with Ofsted using kind of British values, this terminology to target Jewish schools and say, if you don't teach same-sex marriage, you'll be closed down. Looking at Christian schools where people being questioned about, children were being questioned about whether they were trapped in the wrong body. So vague wording, broad drafting leads to unintended consequences. That's what we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, and that's interesting, sort of making sure that the wording is carefully sort of written and crafted. This just reminds me, you're talking about abortion. Of course, the pro-life group at Manchester University have been receiving, a lot of challenges over the past few days. Yeah. I think it was several hundred people protesting outside one of their talks that was going on. And so if somebody was in a situation where they would label themselves pro-life, under this ruling potentially could be labelled as an extremist. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean that's the reality of the world that we live in. So abortion is having a pro-life view is an unpopular view these days. Upholding the reality of biological sex is an unpopular view for many people these days. Upholding man-woman marriage for life is an unpopular view these days. But we should remember that Christians have often had opposition. I mean, if you think some about the great Christian reformers of the past, Wesley, Wilberforce, Shaftesbury, Josephine Butler, who did so much to protect young girls from prostitution, they were all sort of labelled as extremists of some sort or other. Robert Raikes, who started the Sunday school movement, was labelled an extremist of sorts. And now these people are rightly lauded and admired for all the good that they have done. So Christians shouldn't be frightened. We've got a good message to give. They shouldn't shrink away from trying to influence the public square. That would be the wrong thing to do. But they certainly should pray that whatever wording the government comes up with is it doesn't capture the kind of things that Christians, the kind of good views, the kind of biblical views that Christians would want to put forward.
And have you got any thoughts as to how you'd like some of this wording to be changed or considered?
I think it needs to be targeted. And I mean, we'd have to look at the wording when it comes out, whether it's going to be finalised or whether it'll be out for. They'll consult various people on it. It's too soon to say, but certainly it just needs to be targeted. I mean, the existing wording is very broad. Vocal or active opposition to British values is really broad. Intolerance, hatred, undermining. These are words that we should be wary of.
Yeah. Well, Kieran, we really appreciate you giving us some time. This is a busy day. Thank you so much for helping us to understand a bit more about what's going on so that we can reflect and respond accordingly. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks.